The engine's low rumble was the only sound cutting through the Arizona desert stillness as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose. I gripped the steering wheel of my old red pickup, my heart pounding louder than the motor, because sitting next to me was Lucas, my best friend, my straight best friend, who had no idea how much I'd been hiding. One reckless confession, one wrong turn, and this drive could unravel everything we'd built over years. My name's Eli, 25, a graphic designer with a knack for overthinking and a secret I'd buried deeper than the roots of the saguaro cacti lining the road. Lucas, also 25, was the kind of guy who could charm a rattlesnake, blonde, broad-shouldered, with a laugh that made everyone feel like they belonged. We'd been inseparable since high school in Tucson, bonded by late-night video games and shared dreams of escaping our small-town lives. But while he chased girls and adventure, I chased the courage to tell him I was gay, and that I'd been in love with him for years. It was late summer, the kind of heat that made your skin feel like it was melting into the leather seats. Lucas had called me that morning, his voice bright through the phone. "Eli, man, let's get out of here. Just you, me, and the open road. I need a break from everything." His everything was his recent breakup with Sarah, his girlfriend of 2 years, who'd left him for some finance bro in Phoenix. I didn't ask questions. I just said yes because time with Lucas was like oxygen to me. We'd been driving for hours, the radio crackling with old country tunes, when Lucas leaned back, his boots propped on the dash. "You ever feel like you're running from something, but you don't know what?" he asked, staring out at the endless stretch of sand and rock. His words hit me like a punch. I wanted to say, "Yeah, I'm running from the truth about how I feel about you." Instead, I shrugged, my knuckles whitening on the wheel. All the time. He turned to me, his blue eyes catching the last of the sunlight. "You're different lately, Eli. Quiet, like you're carrying something heavy. You know you can tell me anything, right?" My throat tightened. He was so close, close enough that I could smell the faint cedar of his cologne, close enough that I could see the freckles dusting his nose. I wanted to spill it all, to let the words tumble out like the tumbleweeds rolling across the road. But fear clamped my lips shut. What if he pulled away? What if I lost him? The road curved toward a cliffside lookout, a place we'd stopped at years ago as teenagers, sneaking beers and dreaming about the future. I pulled over, the tires crunching on gravel, and killed the engine. Silence settled over us, thick and heavy. Lucas hopped out, stretching his arms toward the sky, his flannel shirt riding up to reveal a sliver of tan skin. My heart did that stupid flip it always did around him. "Come on," he said, grinning. "Let's watch the stars come out." We sat on the tailgate, the metal still warm from the day's heat, our shoulders brushing as we leaned back. The desert stretched out before us, vast and unjudging, a canvas of shadows and fading light. Lucas cracked open a soda from the cooler, handing me one. "Remember when we came here after graduation?" he said, his voice soft. "You said you wanted to design album covers for rock bands. I was going to be a firefighter. Save the world." He laughed, but it was hollow. "Guess we both got lost somewhere." I swallowed hard, the cold sweating in my hand. "You're not lost, Lucas. You're just figuring it out." My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Inside, I was a mess of nerves, the weight of my secret pressing against my ribs. I wanted to tell him everything. How I'd known I was gay since I was 16. How every time he hugged me or slung an arm around my shoulder, it felt like a promise he didn't know he was making. But I couldn't. Not yet. He turned to me, his expression unreadable. "What about you, Eli? You're always so careful. Like you're afraid of breaking something. What's holding you back?" His words were gentle, but they cut deep. I stared out at the horizon, where the last sliver of sun was disappearing. This was it, the moment I could change everything or lose it all. My pulse raced, a drumbeat urging me to speak. "I'm scared," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Scared of losing what matters most. I didn't dare look at him, but I felt his gaze, steady and searching. The air between us crackled with something unspoken, something that had been building for years. I took a shaky breath, my hands trembling. "Lucas, there's something I need to tell you." The words hung in the air, fragile as the desert breeze. Lucas didn't move, didn't speak, but his silence was louder than any response. My heart slammed against my chest, each beat screaming at me to take it back, to laugh it off as a joke, but I'd crossed the line. There was no going back now. I forced myself to look at him. His face was half-shadowed, the starlight catching the edges of his jaw, his eyes wide and searching. "What is it, Eli?" he asked, his voice low, almost cautious. I wanted to run, to leap off the cliff and let the desert swallow me whole. But his gaze held me there, anchoring me to the moment. "I'm gay," I said, the words spilling out like they'd been clawing at my throat for years. "I've known for a long time, and I didn't know how to tell you." My voice cracked, and I hated how small it sounded. I stared at my hands, twisting the soda can until the aluminum dented. "I was afraid you'd look at me differently, that you'd leave." Lucas exhaled, a sharp sound that cut through the quiet. I braced myself for the worst, for him to stand up, walk away, or worse, say something kind but distant that would shatter me. Instead, he leaned closer, his shoulder pressing against mine. "Eli," he said softly, "you think I'd ditch you over that? You're my best friend. You're your family." Relief flooded me, but it was tinged with something bittersweet. He wasn't running, but he didn't know the whole truth. The bigger confession, the one that could ruin everything, was still lodged in my chest. I opened my mouth to speak, but he beat me to it. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked, not accusing, just curious. "Did you think I wouldn't get it?" I laughed, a shaky, nervous sound. "It's not about you getting it, Lucas. It's about me being terrified of losing you. You're everything to me." The words slipped out before I could stop them, too raw, too close to the truth. I froze, waiting for him to pull back, to sense the weight of what I wasn't saying. But he didn't. Instead, he nudged my shoulder, a familiar gesture that felt like a lifeline. "You're not losing me, dumbass," he said, his grin breaking through the tension. "I'm right here." He paused, his expression softening. "Thanks for telling me, Eli. That took guts." We sat in silence for a while, the stars now bright against the inky sky. The desert felt alive around us, whispering secrets in the rustle of distant brush. I wanted to believe this was enough, that I could keep the rest buried, that our friendship could stay untouched. But the ache in my chest told me otherwise. Loving him in secret was a slow poison, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could stand it. "Let's drive," Lucas said suddenly, hopping off the tailgate. "There's a diner a few miles up the road. I'm starving, and you owe me a burger for keeping secrets." His tone was light, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of something I couldn't read. I nodded, grateful for the distraction, and climbed back into the driver's seat. The diner was a neon-lit oasis in the middle of nowhere, its sign buzzing with the words "Marge's Place." Inside, it smelled of coffee and fried onions, and the jukebox played a soft Springsteen tune. We slid into a booth, the red vinyl creaking under us. Lucas ordered a double cheeseburger. I got fries and a milkshake, too nervous to eat much. The waitress, A woman with a kind smile and a name tag reading Darla winked at us. "You boys look like you've got stories to tell," she said before walking away. Lucas leaned forward, his elbows on the table. "So," he said, his voice casual but deliberate, "is there someone? Like a guy you're into?" My stomach dropped. I hadn't expected him to ask. Not so soon. I sipped my milkshake, stalling, my mind racing for an answer that wouldn't betray me. "Nah," I lied, poking at my fries. "Just figuring myself out, you know?" It was a weak excuse, and I could tell he didn't fully buy it. His eyes narrowed slightly, like he was piecing together a puzzle. I changed the subject, asking about his firefighting training, and he let it drop, launching into a story about a drill gone wrong at the academy. But the question lingered, heavy as the desert heat. As we ate, I noticed the way his hands moved when he talked, animated and sure, the way his laugh filled the diner. Every detail of him was etched into me, a map I'd memorized without meaning to. I wondered if he'd ever look at me the way I looked at him, if he could ever see me as more than his best friend. The thought was dangerous, but it burned brighter than the neon lights outside. When we left the diner, the night had grown cooler, the stars sharper against the sky. Lucas tossed me the keys. "Your turn to drive," he said, a challenge in his voice. I slid behind the wheel, my hands steadier now, and pulled back onto the highway. The road stretched out before us, dark and endless, and for a moment, it felt like we could go anywhere, be anything. But as we rounded a bend, the headlights caught something in the distance. A figure on the side of the road, waving frantically. My heart lurched. "Lucas, you see that?" I slowed the truck, squinting into the darkness. It was a young woman, maybe 20, her clothes torn and her face streaked with dirt. She looked desperate, her eyes wide with fear. "Pull over," Lucas said, his voice sharp. I did, and he was out of the truck before I could stop him, running toward her. My pulse spiked, a mix of worry and instinct kicking in. Whoever she was, whatever she was running from, our night was about to take a turn neither of us could have predicted. The woman's name was Mia, and her story poured out in a rush as we sat in the truck, her trembling hands clutching a bottle of water Lucas had grabbed from the cooler. She was 20, a college student from Flagstaff, with dark curls and a voice that shook with every word. "My boyfriend, ex-boyfriend," she corrected, her eyes darting to the road behind us. "He's unhinged. I left him tonight and he chased me. I ran until I couldn't anymore." Her shirt was ripped at the sleeve, and a bruise bloomed on her cheek, telling a story she didn't need to spell out. Lucas's jaw tightened, his firefighter instincts kicking in. "Where is he now?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with anger. Mia shook her head, tears welling. "I don't know. I lost him a mile back, but he's got a car. He's not gonna stop." I glanced at Lucas, my stomach nodding. This wasn't just a detour anymore. This was trouble, the kind that could spiral fast. "We're getting you somewhere safe," I said, starting the engine. "There's a police station in the next town, about 20 miles out." Mia nodded, but her eyes kept flicking to the rearview mirror, like she expected her ex to materialize from the darkness. Lucas slid into the back seat with her, his presence calm and grounding, while I drove, my hands tight on the wheel. The highway felt different now, less like freedom and more like a trap waiting to spring. As we drove, Mia's story unraveled. Her ex, Derek, had always been controlling, but tonight he'd snapped, screaming, breaking things, grabbing her arm hard enough to leave marks. She'd fled their campsite, running through the desert until she hit the road. I thought I was gonna die out there, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the engine. Lucas reached out, squeezing her shoulder gently. You're safe now, he said, and I believed him. He had that way of making people feel protected, like nothing could touch them. But I couldn't shake the unease crawling up my spine. The road was too quiet, the night too dark. Every shadow felt like a threat. I kept stealing glances at Lucas in the rearview mirror. His face set in determination, and something in me ached. Here he was, saving someone else, while I was still too scared to save myself by telling him the truth. About 10 miles out, headlights flared behind us, bright and aggressive, closing in fast. Mia gasped, shrinking into the seat. That's him, she said, her voice breaking. That's Derek's car. My heart slammed into my ribs. The headlights grew closer, the roar of an engine cutting through the night. Lucas leaned forward, his hand on my shoulder. Eli, floor it. I pressed the gas, the old truck groaning as it picked up speed. The road twisted through the desert, narrow and unforgiving, with nowhere to pull off. The car behind us, a black SUV, kept pace, its lights blinding in the mirror. He's not stopping, Mia whimpered, clutching the seat. Lucas turned to her, his voice firm. He's not getting to you, I promise. I didn't know if we could outrun him. My truck wasn't built for speed, and the gas gauge was dipping dangerously low. Lucas, what's the plan? I asked, my voice tight. He didn't hesitate. There's a gas station a few miles up. It's open late. We get there, we call the cops, and we end this. His confidence steadied me, but the SUV was gaining, its bumper nearly kissing my tailgate. The gas station appeared like a beacon, its fluorescent lights cutting through the dark. I swerved into the lot, tires screeching, and parked near the pumps. The SUV screeched to a stop behind us, blocking us in. A man, Derek, I assumed, jumped out, tall and wiry, his face twisted with rage. Mia, he shouted, slamming a fist on the hood of my truck. Get out here now. Lucas was out of the truck in a flash, positioning himself between Derek and the door where Mia cowered. Back off, he said, his voice low and dangerous. I scrambled out, my heart pounding, standing beside Lucas. Derek's eyes flicked to me, then back to Lucas, sizing us up. This ain't your business, he snarled. She's mine. She's not anybody's. I snapped, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. Lucas glanced at me, a flicker of pride in his eyes, and it lit something inside me. A courage I didn't know I had. Mia stayed in the truck, her face pale, as I dialed 911 on my phone, my hands shaking but my voice steady as I gave the operator our location. Derek took a step forward, his fists clenched, but Lucas didn't budge. You're not touching her, he said, his stance solid as the desert rock around us. For a moment, I saw the firefighter he was training to be, fearless, ready to stand in the fire for someone else. But I also saw the friend who'd always had my back, and I knew I'd do the same for him. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Derek hesitated, his eyes darting between us and the road. This isn't over, he spat, but he backed toward his SUV, peeling out just as red and blue lights flashed on the horizon. Mia sobbed in relief, and Lucas turned to me, his expression a mix of exhaustion and resolve. You okay? He asked, his hand brushing my arm. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. In that moment, with the adrenaline still pumping and the night alive with danger, I realized something. I couldn't keep hiding. Not from him. Not anymore. As the police pulled up, their lights casting shadows across the lot. I made a silent vow. Before this night was over, I'd tell Lucas everything, even if it broke me. The police took me as statement under the harsh glow of the gas station's lights, their radios crackling as she recounted Derek's rage. She sat wrapped in a blanket Lucas had found in the truck, her voice steadying with every word. I stood nearby, my hands shoved in my pockets, watching Lucas talk to an officer, his gestures calm but authoritative. He was in his element, taking charge, and I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride, and something deeper, something I was running out of reasons to hide. When the cops finally let us go, promising to track down Derek, Mia hugged us both, her eyes brimming with gratitude. "I don't know what I would have done without you guys," she said, her voice thick. Lucas waved it off, his usual humility kicking in. "Just glad you're safe," he told her. A women's shelter in the next town agreed to take her in for the night, and after making sure she was settled with a social worker, we were back on the road, the silence between us heavier than ever. It was past midnight now, the desert air cool against my skin as I drove. Lucas stared out the window, his face unreadable, the weight of the night settling over us like dust. I wanted to say something, to bridge the gap that had opened since my confession, but the words felt trapped, tangled in fear and hope. Finally he spoke, his voice quiet. "That was intense. You were pretty badass back there, Eli." I laughed, a nervous sound that broke the tension. "Me? You're the one who stared down a psycho like it was nothing." He grinned, but it faded quickly, his eyes locking onto mine in the dim light of the dashboard. "You didn't have to step up like that," he said. "But you did. For her. For me." My heart stuttered. "Of course I did," I said, my voice barely steady. "You're my best friend, Lucas. I'd do anything for you." The words carried more weight than I meant them to, and I saw something shift in his expression. A question, maybe, or a realization. He leaned back, running a hand through his hair, and for a moment, I thought he'd let it go. But then he turned to me, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "Eli, back at the lookout you said you were scared of losing what matters most. What did you mean?" His question was a knife, cutting straight to the truth I'd been dodging all night. My hands tightened on the wheel, the road blurring as my pulse raced. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading and craving. I pulled over onto the shoulder, the truck's tires crunching on gravel, and killed the engine. The silence was deafening. I turned to face him, my heart in my throat. "Lucas," I swallowed, forcing the words out. "I'm in love with you. I have been for years. I didn't tell you because I was terrified it'd ruin us. But I can't keep pretending it's not there." The confession hung between us, raw and exposed, like a wound I couldn't cover. I braced for rejection, for the end of everything. Lucas didn't speak at first. His eyes searched mine, wide and unguarded, and I saw a storm of emotions flicker across his face. Shock, confusion, something else I couldn't name. "Eli," he said finally, his voice hoarse. I don't know what to say." My stomach sank, but he kept going. "I'm straight. You know that. But I don't want to lose you either. You're the most important person in my life." His words were a lifeline and a heartbreak all at once. He wasn't running, but he wasn't reaching for me either. I nodded, my throat tight, trying to keep the tears at bay. "I get it," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I just needed you to know." I started the engine again, needing to move, to escape the weight of the moment. Lucas didn't stop me, but his hand rested on my arm, a gentle anchor that kept me from falling apart. We drove in silence for a while, the road stretching into the night. I thought about Mia, about how she'd found the courage to run from someone who hurt her. I thought about Lucas, standing between her and danger without hesitation. And I thought about myself, finally free of the secret that had chained me for so long. It hurt, but it was a clean pain, like a cut that would heal. As we neared Tucson, the city lights glowing faintly in the distance, Lucas spoke again. Eli, I need time to process this, but I'm not going anywhere, okay? His voice was steady, a promise I wanted to believe. I nodded, a flicker of hope sparking in my chest. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was a beginning, even if I didn't know what kind yet. We pulled into my driveway just before dawn, the sky turning a soft gray. Lucas grabbed his bag from the back, pausing before he got out. Tonight was a lot, he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. But I'm glad it was with you. He reached out, his hand brushing mine for a fleeting moment, and my heart leapt, even as I told myself not to hope too much. As he walked to his car, I stood by the truck, watching him go. The desert night had changed us. Maybe not in the way I dreamed, but in a way that felt real. I didn't know what came next, but for the first time I wasn't afraid to find out. The days after our drive felt like walking on a tightrope. I went through the motions: work, coffee, sketching designs in my cramped Tucson apartment, but Lucas was everywhere in my thoughts. His touch on my arm, his promise to stay, replaying like a song I couldn't shake. He hadn't pulled away, but he hadn't reached out either, and the silence between us was a new kind of ache. A week later, he texted me, "Meet me at the Lookout tonight, 8 p.m. My heart raced as I read it, a mix of hope and dread twisting in my gut. I didn't know what he wanted to say, but I knew I couldn't say no. I drove out to the same cliffside where I'd first confessed, the desert bathed in twilight, the air thick with the scent of creosote. Lucas was already there, leaning against his Jeep, his silhouette sharp against the fading light. He looked up as I parked, his expression softer than I'd expected. "Hey," he said, his voice warm but hesitant. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak, and joined him on the tailgate of his Jeep. The stars were just beginning to peek through, a reminder of that night that had changed everything. For a moment, we just sat there, the silence companionable but charged, like the air before a storm. "I've been thinking about what you said," Lucas started, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "About, how you feel." My stomach clenched, but I stayed quiet, letting him find his words. "It threw me, Eli. Not because I'm mad or anything. I'm not. It's just I've never thought about you that way. But I've been thinking about what you mean to me." He turned to me, his blue eyes catching the starlight, and I saw something new in them, vulnerability, maybe, or a kind of clarity. "You're my best friend," he said, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "You've been there for me through everything. My breakup, my dad's cancer scare, all of it. And that night with Mia, you didn't hesitate. You were right there with me, no questions asked." I swallowed hard, my heart pounding. "You'd do the same for me?" I said, my voice rough. He nodded, a small smile breaking through. "Yeah, I would. That's the thing, Eli. I don't know if I can give you what you want, what you deserve. I'm still figuring out who I am, But I know I don't want a life without you in it." His words hit me like a wave, equal parts relief and longing. He wasn't saying he loved me back. Not the way I wanted, but he was saying something just as powerful. He saw me, all of me, and he wasn't walking away. I took a shaky breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's enough for now," I said, and I meant it. Love wasn't a demand. It was a gift, and I'd given mine freely. What came next was up to both of us. Lucas reached out, his hand finding mine, and for a moment he held it. Not a promise, not a declaration, but a connection. His touch was warm, grounding, and I let myself feel it, let myself believe in the possibility of something more. Someday. "We're gonna be okay," he said, his voice quiet but sure. "You and me, we're bigger than this." We stayed there until the sky was a blanket of stars, talking about everything and nothing. Our old high school pranks, his firefighting dreams, my latest design project. It felt like us again, but different, like a new chapter had begun without erasing the old ones. As we drove back to town, the road felt less like an escape and more like a path forward, one we'd navigate together. Weeks later, I got a call from Mia. She was safe, living with her sister in Phoenix, and Derek was facing charges. "I'll never forget what you and Lucas did," she said, her voice bright with gratitude. I smiled, thinking of that night, of how it had broken me open and pieced me back together. Lucas and I were still us, best friends, maybe something more in time, but we were stronger now, forged in the heat of that desert night. Life didn't give us a neat ending, no cinematic kiss under the stars, but it gave us something better. Honesty, trust, and a bond that could weather any storm. I'd gone on a drive with my straight friend, expecting to lose him. Instead, one turn changed our relationship forever. Not into what I'd dreamed, but into something real, something worth fighting for. And as I looked at Lucas across a diner table weeks later, his laugh filling the air, I knew I'd found my forever, whatever shape it took.